here, who was originally from Louisiana. So some very dear friends of mine now pastor the church where he grew up in Logansport. It's a great honor to be here. I've had the privilege of teaching all over the world about disabilities and how to work with children who have special needs and disabilities. I'm going to say a disclaimer right off the bat. I don't know everything. I wish I did, and according to, my husband, that I was a know-it-all, but we're not going to believe that anymore. But so I have a history with Lufkin, a brief history, and my mother-in-law actually lived here for a while, and I had a lot of family that lived here for a while. And so it was kind of nice when I drove back through to see some of the familiar things when I came back. My favorite was there's still road construction from Nacogdoches to here. Okay. My second favorite thing was still the signs that say future corridor of I-69. Like, it's been probably 15 years since I came to Lufkin, and that sign was up 15 years ago, okay? And then the best thing ever, so there's a brief story I have to go with this. Right before Christmas, my Ford Explorer was hit by a buck. And so the rental company put me in this little sporty Malibu, okay? Now, I'm a nanny, and I'm in this little sporty Malibu. It's bright blue out there. If y'all saw the bright blue car, that's me. And I hit Texas, and it's like the speed limits jump up. I was like, yeah, I got this. And so I thought, man, I better watch, make sure I'm not going to ticket. Felt like I was like doing something wrong. But that 75-mile-an-hour hit, and I was like, yeah, I got this little sporty car. I'm going to take advantage of this. So I made great time getting here. But so we do have a history with Lufkin. I do have a son with disabilities. And it's been quite the journey. I'm happy to see Sister Misty here. She probably remembers little Ed from when he was younger. He was an absolute mess. We first came to Lufkin. We stayed on the campgrounds with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. They were staying in a trailer on the campgrounds, and we stayed in a cabin. And he came up missing. So we got up the next morning, and little Ed was gone. And we were like, how far could he have gone? But, he could go far because he was like crazy on wheels when he got moving. So we are searching all over. We're trying not to wake up my brother-in-law and sister-in-law in their camper. And they didn't have any children at this time. And so they don't know what to do with, kids at this point. Well, we found little Ed. And we pull up in our car, my husband and I are in a panic, and we find little Ed outside my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's camper, and it had an electric jack. And my brother-in-law is standing outside in a suit coat with no shirt on, wrapped up like this, trying to stay modest. My sister-in-law is standing in the door. She's like, stop him, stop him, stop him. And little Ed is pressing the button on the jack, and the trailer's going doot-doot-doot-doot-doot-doot, and doot-doot-doot-doot-doot-doot. And eventually it fell off the little block. So that's life with a child with a disability and a special need. And I'm using the word disability. I really don't like the word disability, but it is the ADA legal terminology. So therefore, we've tried to stick with it. I am the co-founder of Able Ministry, UPCI. We began in 2014. We have our manual and stuff out now. I'll explain more about that probably in our second session. So I have a question. Usually I do an activity right about now, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to do it. But I do have a question. Be brave, okay? This is class participation. So everybody be brave, okay? Who is willing to stand up or raise their hand and give me a goal or a dream that they have had since they were a child? Not everybody jump up at once. Come on now. Go for it.
My dream as a kid was to teach children with disabilities, and I'm a special education teacher. So.
Phenomenal. Anybody else? It can be anything. My daughter wanted to be a crawfish when she grew up, okay? I'm being serious. Anybody? Oh, I'm sorry.
When I was a kid, and still now, I've always wanted to work in a type of therapy to help children with disabilities and special needs.
Amazing. Okay, it doesn't have to be anything that has to do with disabilities at all. It can be anything. Again, the crawfish and the football. I had another one that wanted to be a football. What was wrong with my kids? Anybody else being brave enough? Go.
When I was younger, I wanted to own a hospital, but I wanted to know every single position that worked in a hospital.
Cool. That's some big goals, lofty goals. Anybody else?
I just want to be a wife and mommy.
Good for you. Good for you. Same for you. Phenomenal. Anybody else? Go for it.
I was a little bit older kid, and I became a candy striper in the hospital, and I wanted to be with children to reach out and show them Jesus' love.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's amazing. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to be a movie star.
There you go. Thank you for your honesty. You want to be a movie star. Yes. I'm going to put you with my daughter, Stephanie, who wanted to be a crawfish. Anybody else? Missy, don't tell her I told this story.
I always wanted to go on a missions trip.
On a missions trip. Beautiful. Okay, now the next part is, how many of you have accomplished anything that you dreamed of doing as a child? How many of you have accomplished it now? Go for it. Special ed teacher. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am. Being married and owning a home. Fabulous. Did you become a wife and mommy?
Yes, ma'am.
Who wanted to own the hospital? Yes.
I have a bachelor's degree in healthcare management.
There you go. This is amazing. But let me tell you the one thing I did not hear. I did not hear one person say that they wanted to have a child or a loved one with a disability. Okay? When we found out that we were expecting, I never once said, "Oh, I hope this baby has a disability." You don't do that. I'm going to share our story, and I was a bit hesitant to share this PowerPoint, which has caused so much drama this morning. Sister Jones actually messaged me in a message this morning. It accidentally came up as the Jesus team. And let me tell you, after working with this media team this morning, they are the Jesus team. So pat yourselves on the back there, brother. And I found out that I need to do my PowerPoints in a widescreen. I learned a lot this morning. I was hesitant about sharing our story because our story is a bit drastic. And Brother Bullard preached that message. How many of you were in here to hear his message this morning? It was phenomenal. It was about the chains, and it was about the help bringers. And I'm going to share this PowerPoint, and it's going to tell our story, my family's story, and why it is so important that you open your hearts and you open your eyes and you open your minds to accepting those with disabilities, because you don't know where they're coming from. I gotta put my glasses on. They gave me the hold up sign. While they're working on that, I'll talk a little bit about Able Ministry. So Able Ministry, we started in 2014, Denise, Wynn, and I, and we were just two moms who were desperate for our children to be accepted at church. And we spent so much time when my child was young, sitting in the foyer, Try it again. Sitting in the foyer, outside. And so Able Ministry began, but we're going to try to share our story one more time with y'all. Just let it run. Can I start it at the beginning? All right, guys, thank y'all so much for your patience.
Could
So I did not share this with y'all to make anyone feel sad or feel sorry for us. I shared this with you because my husband, Bill, was a bus ministry kid. Little Ed, and then he became disabled. So I lived the life of working with a child with disabilities, and then I had to work and learn how to live and be the wife of someone who had a physical disability as well. It's important to know these things, this information, because how you accept people and how you look at them when they come into the church, like Brother Bullard said a while ago, with the chains on, you just don't know. When we were in Baltimore, which is where little Ed was born, our claim to fame is Dr. Ben Carson was his neurosurgeon. So yay. He still remembers little Ed as Fast Eddie because he always tinkled on him whenever he checked his incisions. True story. And he actually still emails little Ed back and forth. But parenting a child with a disability is absolutely exhausting. So can we go to the next video of the, let's do the music video. And then we'll get into our disabilities. But this stuff is important to know how exhausting it is to parent a child like this. You love them.
Here we are. All right, little Ed.
It's not
Here we
showing?
are.
Well, y'all can just
All nice
listen.
and formal
Just listen.
here. What's your favorite thing to listen to in the world?
Music,
Music. What kind of music?
any kind, mainly classical.
Mainly classical? Okay, what's your favorite song to listen to?
There's a lot out there.
Okay, remember when you used to listen to the national anthem over and over and over again?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me some of the versions you listened to.
Whitney Houston, listen to the story of it. The Army Band, Marine Band, couple
Wow.
good music.
What about bagpipes?
Oh yeah.
Okay, and who is your favorite singer of the Star Spangled Banner?
Whitney Houston.
Whitney
Good.
Houston. Okay.
Okay, we'll stop right there. But y'all, let me tell y'all, I have been subjected to the national anthem from bagpipes. Did y'all even know it was played on bagpipes? Okay, I have listened to it played on the kazoo. Okay, he used to, and you know, children with autism, individuals with autism, a lot of times will get their head set on something and they will listen to it over and over and over and over again. And I can remember being in the living room and little Ed being in his room at the back of the house. Little Ed, I can't take it again. You got to turn it off. Because that was the 30th time that I'd listened to it on the kazoo, okay? When he was born, we thought we had it under control, and we didn't. And there were times that it felt like we were not going to make it anymore. But there was a social worker who came into our home, and she became our best friend. She gave us light at the end of the tunnel. I hated going to church. I'm going to be honest and very transparent with y'all. I hated going to church. I hated getting the kids dressed. I hated everything because it was so much work to go and do any of this stuff. His heart monitor would go off in the middle of service. We'd have to pack up and leave. I had one daughter who was like, whew. She yelled for her uncle to help her one time when I took her outside, and then I threatened her with her life. You know, I had other children. And so we were exhausted. And this social worker came into our life, and she was a miracle worker, in my opinion, at that point in time. She was not apostolic. But if she had invited me to her church, I would have gone. And I was raised in this truth. My mom got the Holy Ghost when I was 4 years old at a camp meeting or something like that in Orange, Texas. I would have gone because somebody accepted us and loved us. I know she was just doing her job. And I knew it was unethical the way I was thinking. And had she invited me to her church, it would have been unethical. But the point is, at that point in time, I was probably so desperate. If I'd have had Google, I would have researched her, found out where she went to church, and followed her and just showed up there one day. Okay? But somebody was accepting of my family that was traversing this new, scary, dangerous road. That's why it's important as teachers. You may not have a child with a disability yourself, but that doesn't mean that you cannot grow to learn to love them. The key is education. The key is education. That's one of the things that Able Ministry, we just put this book out last May, and it's a disabilities ministry. We do have training on Ministry Central that has just been completed, and then I actually travel around and do trainings in churches to certify our churches. You can grow these burdens. You can grow your knowledge. You can grow your knowledge base on how to work with the families. Our next session will be more about accommodations and adaptations and different things that you can do. There'll be a lot of questions and answers, activities through that. But for this session, now that I've given the whole spiel of why this is so valuable and so important, let's talk about some of the most common special needs and disabilities. The one thing to remember is not, how many of you are parents? Okay. How many of you have more than one child? Are your children the same? No. I have 4. Oh, shoot, I just gave something away. But my oldest one, I thought I was the bomb mom. She threw that bottle down at 10 months old, never picked it back up. She took her diaper off at 22 months old and never had an accident. And then I had that second one. And she schooled me. So as much as a difference as there is between your normal children, quote, normal children, there's that many disabilities. You can have a child with autism, and one child with autism is going to act a certain way, and that very next child that you might meet is not going to be the same. And in this world that we live in right now, the rates are rising, okay? We focus so much on autism, but we need to remember that there are other disabilities besides autism. Okay, the rates right now are 1 in 36 for a child with autism. It's in our foods, it's preservatives, it's all that stuff. That's my whole other soapbox. So we're going to focus right now, and I will pause long enough. I do want y'all to ask me some questions. And like I said, I don't know everything. I've been doing this a long time, parenting and educating. So we're going to talk about ADHD first. That usually begins in childhood, okay? Sometimes it's misdiagnosed. ADHD goes along with a lot of other disabilities. And sometimes it's difficult to ascertain what is truly ADHD and if it's something more, if it's something less, okay? How many of you have ever worked with a child in your classroom that has ADHD? How many of you wanted to pull your hair out? We're just going to be honest, okay? I know that with my child, I know teachers wanted to pull their hair out when they had him. Or when they saw him coming, they were like, oh, God, he came to church today. You know, oh, they made it. Shucks. You know, they're easily distracted. They are so difficult to maintain attention. When you leave church after you've taught a classroom of a child with ADHD or autism, how many of you are ready to go home and take a Sunday school nap? Yes. The next thing that we're going to focus on, I'm going to rush through these so that we can have some questions and answers, is the autism umbrella. And again, there's a lot of focus on autism because it is growing at such a fast pace. Excuse me. It's a wide term for a variety of levels of autism. It can be genetic. We did a genetic testing in our family to find out if little Ed's autism was genetic or if it was environmental. We did discover, this was in Baltimore, we were kind of like the guinea pigs for some of the new testing. We did carry the gene for it. Let me back up and say, little Ed was born with spina bifida occulta and hydrocephalus. And he had his first surgery at 5 days old. He had his second one at 3 weeks old. It was hit or miss for a while, you know, whether our little miracle baby was going to make it. But he did, and he's still making it. But the autism did not come about until he was 13, and it was a sigh of relief to actually finally have a diagnosis for him. But our genetic testing that we went through focused mainly on the spina bifida, and we carried the gene for it. My husband and I both carried the recessive gene for it. And then as he got older, when the autism came out, we had more genetic testing done, and they said there was a likelihood, they couldn't give us 100%, that it was genetic. Now I have a grandson who has level 1 autism as well, so we're kind of pretty certain that it is hereditary in our family. But it is in our food. It is in our environment. We have noticed through the travels that I do that most of your communities that have logging industries, paper mills, logging industries, there's a higher ratio of children with autism. I did a seminar in Lumberton, and I looked at their special ed statistics, and they were like out the door crazy. And then they said that their main source of revenue was the logging industry. In Louisiana, in the Balkanville area, my daughter teaches in that area. I know y'all not familiar with that. I know Sister Misty is. They have extremely high levels of autism in that area as well. We have a huge paper mill there. And what do paper mills shoot out? Stuff, the water. So a lot of times, what we breathe, that affects us. I have heard, my political agenda has nothing to do with this, but I have heard that they are about to do some research to see if they can figure out some of what the autism is. But they often show a lack of interest, an ability to interact, limited ability to communicate. Now, that's not often always the case. Little Ed, as you noticed, speaks very, very well. He's been exposed to a whole lot since he was born. He has started therapy very, very young. He was just a tiny baby when he started therapy. So we don't know if that helped him not regress as much. But he can tell you about a dung beetle, but can't remember to go to the bathroom on his own. So that's how autism works, like that. They struggle with regulating their emotions. I don't know if you noticed, the video was sideways, but he struggles with eye contact. That's a really big thing, too. So if you get a kid in your Sunday school class that won't maintain eye contact with you, that's okay. That is okay, because their ability to make eye contact is not them being bad. They literally just can't. We live in a culture of you look at me, and I know you're focusing on me. But in some foreign countries, if you stare somebody in the eye while they are speaking with you, it's a sign of disrespect. But in children with autism and adults with autism, your more severe, profound cases of autism, they can't look you in the eye. I mean, you might could physically hold their face, but even then their eyes are going to shift because they don't want to make the eye contact. They struggle with changes. Little Ed chews his knuckle. This knuckle on this hand is very deformed from him gnawing it. So you may see a child with autism doing those kinds of things, doing that, shaking their hands. He shakes his hands when he gets nervous or antsy. He'll also shake his head like this. He rocks every night. If he goes to sleep, he's going to rock. If he lays down, he's going to rock. He has a baby blanket that's really like tattered, and he will not let me touch it. It can't even be washed anymore, but it's been with them since he was born. They'll have something that they typically want to hang on to and take with them. I was noticing your lights. It's kind of instinct for me anywhere I go to look at the environment. Kudos to y'all, Sister Jones. This is a great environment for a child with autism and sensory issues because there's very few, I don't even know if there's fluorescent lights up in there. But fluorescent lights affect the kids, the buzzing sounds. They have usually hypersensitive hearing. This is a great lighting situation. They have a high pain tolerance. Let me share another story. I'm going to share a lot about little Ed, y'all, because that's my personal experience. Little Ed accidentally got shot through the right hip. And I was right after his dad passed away. And he was staying with my daughter. And when I called, he's like, Mom, I was taking my mom to Florida. And he said, Mom, don't worry about coming home. I'm fine. And it was a hole through his hip, and they had to like go in and stitch his abdomen and replace his, it nicked his colon and all kinds of stuff. But Mom, I'm fine. I mean, he hurt, but to him, he was fine. It wasn't that bad. Me, I'd have been like, give me some pain pills right now. But that's how they think. That's how their bodies react. They react differently. The self-stimming things that you might see in your Sunday school class, the hand shaking, the head shaking. There's different ways that you can handle those things. We will get into that a little bit more. Sometimes you can tap them on the shoulder, redirect them. That makes a huge difference. Now this one, I'm moving on to sensory processing disorders. People don't even realize that this is a disability, but it is. How many of you have funny things with tastes and textures and stuff? Okay, we all do. I cannot eat a watermelon. I love watermelon flavor. And in the next session, that's not the answer to one of the questions that y'all are going to be asked. But I love watermelon flavor. But I couldn't eat a piece of watermelon if my life depended on it. I'm like, just throw me over the bridge. Because I can't stand the way it feels in my mouth. Okay? Smells. I have the nose of a hound dog. Right now it's kind of funky because I have just getting over the flu. But certain smells. How many of y'all smells trigger you? Yes. How many of you ever cleaned up your child's throw up and you want to go along with them? Okay? But in some people, it's really, really severe. And that's a sensory processing disorder. That's where the information comes into your brain. The brain organizes it, makes sense of it, and then we can use it accordingly. Well, when you have a processing disorder, your brain takes it in, and the little synapses go, and it just gets overblown. And these kids can't help it. These kids cannot help it. There's different types of symptoms. There's tactile, which is a sense of touch. I cannot stand those little rags that they use to dry the cars off with, and the fabric sticks to your fingers. Oh, I can't stand that. Pressure, pain, temperature, and even down to the movement of the hairs on your skins. Vestibular is your sense of movement. It's dealing with your inner ear, gravitational changes in position and space. Little Ed, and again, it's sideways, but I don't know if y'all can notice he kept cocking his head sideways. He kept cocking his head sideways. That's his way of being able to focus. That's a processing disorder. Auditory, oral, little Ed, a lot of these kids will put things in their mouth. It's like a baby putting everything in their mouth to learn about feel, taste, touch, and smell, but they grow up and they're still putting the things in their mouths. And then we have visual. They're hypersensitive. They don't like messy play. Little Ed would go outside and play, get filthy dirty, come in, clean up, take a bath, take a shower, whatever, and go back outside, get filthy dirty again. And it was nothing for us to go through 2 or 3, 4 baths a day. To this day, he still wears certain clothes. Now, he does not like the beach, but he does like to take a shower. But a lot of times these kids don't like to do that kind of stuff because they don't like the way the water feels on their skin. He had a buddy at one of his programs that he went to that didn't never realize that he was dirty, and he smelled really bad. And his poor parents, they did everything that they could to get him to shower, but he didn't like the water, and he didn't realize he was dirty, so they really had a battle on their hands. Little Ed touches everything. How many of you have those kids in your class that touch everything? Touch it. And then pay attention to them. They're going to touch it. They may smell their hand when they're done. They may even lick it. That happens. Little Ed is not self-abusive, but he is very much so accident-prone. Hence, the weird gunshot. That's a story for another time. He's lit the woods on fire, playing fireman. There's another video that I will show y'all right before we close that will kind of help you understand why they're accident-prone, because they have no common sense. Again, the immunity to pain. Children with sensory processing disorders are often misunderstood, misdiagnosed, and labeled as challenging children. And they are challenging. What God has called you to do in that Sunday school class is a calling. It is genuinely a calling. But especially if you are developing the skills to work with a child with a disability, your calling, in my opinion, as a parent and an educator, is tenfold. It's tenfold. The last section that we're going to talk about is mental disabilities or intellectual disabilities, formerly known as a really bad word, mental retardation. 75 to 90% of children that have a lower IQ are mildly intellectually disabled. 25% are typically genetic, like Down syndrome. The common symptoms, IQs are below 70, and it affects 2 to 3% of the population. Now, those numbers are on the rise. There's delays in oral language development, lack of memory skills, difficulty learning social norms, what's okay in public, what's not okay, what's okay to do in Sunday school, what's not okay. They don't have problem-solving skills. So the things that we attain by watching others, and we what's the word I'm looking for? We get our skills by watching context clues, those kinds of things. These children don't. They don't. So you have to physically teach them, which is why special education is so important. If you want to be successful in a Sunday school class, make a connection with a special education teacher. I don't know where you go to church, but make a connection with a special ed teacher. I'm willing to share my email address and my phone number. You can always text me. I say text because I respond better to text. But they don't often know how to handle situations. They don't handle instructions, and I'm kind of getting into our second session a little bit, but they may come to church with their breath rank. They may come to church with their clothes 3 different styles, but they're going to choose what feels good on their skin. Children with these lower IQs, it may just be an impulse to pull something out. Mama may have their clothes laid out, but at the last minute they decide to change it. Well, it's not worth that mama's fight to change that child's clothes. Mama's goal is to get that child to church and into that Sunday school classroom. So if that child comes on with 2 different shoes, 2 different socks, and whatever, and what? Every day, yes. Yes. Go with it. And you compliment them and you tell them just how amazing they look that day because you know they picked out their own outfit. Okay? If their teeth are funky, offer them a breath mint if their parent allows it. In North America, intellectual disabilities, aka developmental disabilities, aka mental retardation, includes epilepsy, autism, cerebral palsy, and other disabilities. They typically develop from birth to age 18. Now, the reason why they stop diagnosing typically is at the age of 18 is most of the times you're done growing and maturing by the age of 18. I teach at it's called the Methodist Children's Home. And it is a residential psychiatric treatment facility for children 17 and under. They can stay until they turn 18. And disabilities are so much more than what we just talked about. You're going to meet children who have been abused. Are there any children in here? I'm going to be very candid. Is that okay? You're going to have children that are going to come into you that have been sex trafficked. I do see the extreme cases of it. We have a student right now who was locked in a cage. We just had 2 students that came from South Louisiana that came through Texas from Mexico that were sex trafficked and dropped off by a trucker. These children have souls. And they're going to come into your Sunday school classroom. and they come in at first grade. Our facility starts at fourth grade, but our other facility in South Louisiana starts at first grade. I taught some virtually. These children are abused. They are mentally challenged now. They have what's called arrested development. They stopped developing at the age the abuse started. So you might have a 13-year-old that comes into your classroom who's going to act like a 7-year-old. So again, the thing that I'm telling y'all is to educate yourselves. Research. Mental challenges are the hardest ones to understand. You can see physical stuff all the day long. With little Ed's diagnosis, we knew before he was born that he was going to have all these health issues. They told us to abort him. We knew that was coming. We didn't even know if he was going to survive childbirth. But what hit us that we were not planning was the behavioral issues. And that was something that we had to learn to handle. That's something that y'all are going to have to learn to handle. Education is the key to a successful Sunday school department. Because when you bring in, just like I was willing to go to this social worker's church, stalker, when you win that child, you're going to win a mama, a daddy, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas. You're going to get a whole family. In our case, at the point that I was at, they would have gotten 6 people in their church, and my brother-in-law was the pastor of the church that we went to. I would have walked away. They would have gotten 6, 4 children and 2 adults. So it's important to learn. These are just a few. Now, in the manual right here, there's like a whole chapter dedicated to a whole bunch of different disabilities and different behavioral concerns. And I do have some for sale. I think I have like 10 copies with me. So we'll take a few minutes. We have like 5 minutes. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, go for it. Are they verbal at all?
They're considered nonverbal. That is, I think, changing currently. So they are just thought processors.
Are they identical? Are they identical? Okay, so that makes a difference too. The best thing that you can do is exactly what you're doing, is continue reading to them, because. So, were y'all able to hear what she was saying? Okay, so even though a child is level 3 autism and they're nonverbal, you cannot assume that a child doesn't learn or can't learn just because they can't speak. That just means the part of their brain that processes the speaking isn't able to process it to get the words out of their mouth. There's all kinds of processing disorders. In your case, they cannot process to get out what they're saying, but they're hearing. Yes. And typically kids with autism like this are usually very smart. And they can become con artists too. Am I right? Am I right? So my advice to you is to continue doing exactly what you're doing. And if you have these children similar to her children in your Sunday school department, they're listening. They're listening to you. They're paying attention. Keep reading. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So I have a 12-year-old, very limited verbal son who was not supposed to speak at all when he got diagnosed at 3. And we exposed him every day. We went to church faithfully every Sunday. We went through the meltdowns, we went through the tantrums. We did sign with him like Jesus and beginning to know the word. And he is 12, and now he recites the Lord's Prayer every night at bedtime. And he prays for all of us at lunch, breakfast, and dinner. So it'll come. That's so listening. That's amazing.
Anybody else have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So what are your recommendations for a student, he's more youth age, but where he is on the autism spectrum, I don't know what else he has, but he's
that's one of the things that we have some paperwork that we're going to do in our next session too, is talking about accommodations and adaptations. There's actually a lot of things you can do. One of the things that we recommend, or that as a whole we recommend, is assigning him a buddy. So that if you're noticing him getting, because he's probably getting overstimulated. He's probably getting a lot overstimulated. When you go into a church service and you've had a rough day, and you go in there and the music is loud, it's pumping, and you're like, oh. We all love church, but we have to be honest, it does happen sometimes. That's the same thing for this child, but on a smaller scale in that Sunday school classroom. Have a buddy assigned to him, to where if you're noticing, but it needs to be a good, strong person. You don't want to assign a young lady to this young man. You want to assign someone that's stronger and bigger. You don't want him to scare him, be abusive, anything like that, but you just want him to respect the person that's going to be with him, that can take him for a walk. Assign a buddy, take him for a walk, and sometimes you do have to move that child off because you have more than that one child to take care of. So that's my suggestion to you. It's called the buddy system. One of the things that we will talk about that is in the book is a sensory reset room. And that's a space that you can set up inside of a church that is just a quiet space. Doesn't have to be any space big, that where you can take this child where they can reset, calm themselves down, and be able to take a deep breath. And then the Sunday school teacher can take a deep breath. The other kids can take a deep breath and kind of just reset. The whole purpose is to reset. That's what's going to make a difference. Does that kind of help you out a little bit? We can talk more afterwards if you want to. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Ma'am.
How do you broach, if you have a child in Sunday school who you are noticing some signs or some challenges in the classroom, but they don't have a diagnosis, and the parent may not be there yet with even, accepting that there could be something going on? How do you broach that?
That's a really, really hard spot to be in because you're not a professional. If you have a relationship with that parent, that's going to make a difference. A lot of times parents of children with disabilities and special needs can go one way or another. They can be very sensitive or they can be very open. We started our journey out being very, very sensitive because we had 3 other kids that were all perfectly normal, and by jingos, we were going to make little Ed be perfectly normal. And we had a therapist who finally sat us down, and she was point blank. She said, y'all are ruining this boy. But I don't know if I could have taken that from a Sunday school teacher. So my best advice would be to go talk to your pastor, to your pastoral staff, go to your Sunday school director first, get her or him on board, and then as a team go talk with the pastor and let the pastor make that final decision. Because you could very easily offend, and you don't want to do that, And if a parent never comes to terms with the child's, what you suspect is something that's going on, you continue to make accommodations and adaptations into your classroom without making it obvious that you're doing it, okay? Because you want to do it for the whole class, because it's going to benefit the whole class no matter what. Whatever accommodations you make in your classroom are going to benefit the whole Sunday school classroom, okay? So you don't want to just pinpoint that one child. But if you do have that child in your classroom, make some accommodations that are just going to help everybody. Okay? But I would definitely go to education director and then your pastor and get your pastoral advice. Okay? Anybody else? No? Okay. We're 4 minutes over, but I'm the next session anyway. So in here. So take y'all's break. Thank y'all for being in here with me. I appreciate that very much. Our next session really will work on accommodations. Whoever's in here, you will get handicapped for the next session. Just be prepared.